A few weeks ago, my dad offered me a strange side job. One of his colleagues was going out of town for a couple of days and was looking for someone reliable to just stay at his house while he was gone. Nothing fancy, just to make sure everything was okay. Dad immediately thought of me. The reason was simple. This house had a large CCTV system. There were cameras in almost every room, and on the second floor there was a small room with a control panel. There was a large monitor that showed all the cameras at once. Since I was studying computer science, my dad thought I would be able to easily figure out this system. The man offered me $200 for 2 days. To be honest, it sounded too easy, but I agreed. Dad drove me to the house that same day. It was a large 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing particularly strange at first glance. The owner led me inside and showed me a room with monitors. On the wall hung a large screen, divided into several small videos from the cameras. In front of him was a table with a remote control and a few buttons. Before leaving, the man said one thing. He asked me to stay in this room upstairs if possible and monitor the cameras and not walk around the house all the time. I even liked it, so after they left, I just settled in there. I turned on the TV for background, opened my laptop and started doing my homework. The monitors with the cameras were glowing nearby, but to be honest, I hardly looked at them. Time passed slowly. Nothing happened. When it started to get dark, I remembered one detail. We never discussed where exactly I would sleep, so I decided to look through the cameras and find a bedroom or at least a couch. I started to slowly switch images: kitchen, corridor, living room, and that's when I noticed something strange. The back glass door was open. I leaned closer to the monitor. Maybe it had been like that all day, but I'm pretty sure it had been closed before. An unpleasant feeling immediately appeared in my chest. I started to quickly switch to the other cameras. Everything looked normal until I opened the camera in the living room. In the corner of the room was a large wardrobe, and its door was slightly ajar. I clearly remembered that it had been closed before. That's when I wrote my dad a message. I asked him to quickly call the owner and ask if he had suddenly returned. While I waited for an answer, I kept my eyes on the monitor, and then it happened. In the dark, grainy image, the closet door slowly opened even wider, and a person emerged, tall, and almost completely black figure due to the poor lighting. I literally froze, pressed my hands to my mouth to keep from making a sound. At that moment, my elbow accidentally caught something on the table. It was some kind of heavy object. It fell to the floor with a thud. The sound was loud, too loud. The person on the screen stopped instantly. She slowly raised her head, as if listening, and then she turned towards the stairs and began to move. A step. Pause. Another step. She was climbing the stairs. Very slowly. Just then my phone vibrated. It was my dad. He wrote, "No, he's definitely not home. I spoke to him half an hour ago." What happened? I started typing my reply quickly. My hands were literally shaking. I wrote that someone was in the house. I took my eyes off the monitor for a few seconds, and that's when I heard sound. Quiet but very clear. A knock on the door, right on the door of the room. I slowly raised my head. I looked at the door, then at the monitor. On one of the screens I saw a person. She was standing right in front of the door of this room, and at that moment I remembered one detail: that there was no lock on this door. I didn't have to think long. I ran to the window. I opened it and jumped out. There were bushes under the window, so I didn't get hit hard. After that, I just ran. I ran for about half a block before stopping to catch my breath. The phone rang. It was my dad. I asked him to call the landlord immediately and ask if he was expecting anyone at the house. The answer was short. No one had a key. Asterisk. And no one was allowed to enter the house. He immediately called the police. Later, they reviewed the security camera footage. The video showed a man breaking the back door. Then he entered the house, and he hid in the closet in the living room. He sat there for almost 20 minutes. Well, I was upstairs, and I didn't even know he was there when the object fell off the table. He heard a noise, and he decided to check where it came from. The recording ends with me jumping out the window. After that, the intruder simply leaves the house and disappears into the darkness. Because of the poor quality of the video, his face was impossible to recognize. He was never found. And to be honest, still sometimes think about one thing. If I hadn't dropped that thing off the table, it might still be sitting in that closet, waiting for me to fall asleep. I realized that someone was standing in the yard, only because he breathed on the window glass right behind me, and if I hadn't woken up at that exact moment, I probably would have never known he was there. A few years ago, my friend Tom asked me to watch his house for one night. He and his wife and kids were going to a short weekend in another city. They needed someone to feed the animals and just stay overnight in the house. I agreed. First, I was paid. Second, I knew the house well. I had been there dozens of times. They had 2 cats, a fish tank, and a parrot cage in the kitchen. The whole day passed completely peacefully. I fed the animals, watched a little TV, and made sure the door was locked. There was one room in the house that I particularly liked, a small sunroom at the back of the house. It was surrounded by large windows on 3 sides. There was a large couch and a TV on the wall. I decided to sleep there. Late at night, I turned on the TV and lay on the couch. I fell asleep around 1 in the morning, but I woke up about an hour later. The TV was still on, so I turned it off with the remote, and the room immediately fell into darkness. I tried to fall back asleep, and that's when I heard a sound. A click. It was like someone had opened a gate in the yard. It was made of cheap PVC plastic, and I remembered that sound well. At first I thought it was the wind, but something about the sound was too clear. I slowly raised my head. The room was surrounded by windows, so I started looking around into the darkness. At first, nothing. Just a black yard. Dark trees, and the faint light from a street lamp on a nearby street. Had almost laid back down, and then I heard another sound crush, like someone stepping on dry leaves. Right under the window. At that moment, I realized one very unpleasant thing. Someone was walking in the yard. Slowly turned my head to the window behind the sofa and froze. There was a man standing there. His face was almost pressed against the glass. He was looking into the room. I don't know if he saw me. The room was dark, but I could clearly see his silhouette. He was big. Much bigger than me. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't know what to do, so I did the first thing that came to mind. I jumped up from the couch and shouted, "Hey, get out of here." My voice was much louder than I expected. For a second the man just stood there. He didn't move, and that was the scariest thing, because it seemed like he wasn't even scared. Then he slowly walked away from the window. I thought he was walking, but a few seconds later I heard another sound, the click of a handle, the back door. He was trying to get into the house. At that moment I really started to panic. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the phone and started dialing, and I shouted towards the door, "I'm calling the police." Luckily, it worked. I heard quick footsteps, then the sound of a gate, and silence. To be honest, I never called the police. I just texted Oleg. I explained that someone was trying to get into the yard. He answered almost immediately and told me to lock myself in the bedroom upstairs. So I did. I closed the door, locked it, and barely fell asleep until morning. The next day they came home. Then we noticed something strange. Their sedan was parked in the driveway, and all 4 tires were flat. All of them. We assumed it could have been someone who knew the family wouldn't be home. Maybe someone who had a grudge against them. And when he realized there was a person in the house after all, he just took his anger out on the car. That's just a guess. And to be honest, I really hope it's true, because there's another thought that sometimes crosses my mind. Maybe he didn't plan on robbing the house at all. Maybe he just wanted to get inside. And if I hadn't woken up then, he could have stood outside that window a lot longer and watched while I was sleeping.
When I was at university, I was always looking for ways to earn some extra money. My scholarship barely covered my basic expenses, and I sometimes wanted to afford something more than the cheapest food from the supermarket. So I agreed to almost any part-time job, helping with moving, handing out leaflets, babysitting, or doing some small housework. One day, a classmate of mine told me that his neighbor was looking for someone to look after his house for the weekend. He and his wife were going to another city to celebrate their wedding anniversary. The pay was pretty good, especially for a student, and I agreed without any hesitation. On Saturday morning, I arrived at the address. An elderly man named Vassal opened the door for me. He looked calm and friendly. We quickly got to know each other, after which he showed me around the house. The house was large, old, but well. The rooms had massive furniture, paintings, and old photographs hung on the walls. Everything looked a bit old-fashioned, but cozy. Vassal showed me where the kitchen and bathroom were, where the keys were, how to turn on the alarm in the yard. He said that I could use the kitchen and everything I needed. They allowed me to spend the night in the guest room on the first floor. About an hour later, he and his wife packed up their things, thanked me again for agreeing to help, and left. I was left alone in a large, quiet house. At first, it even seemed a bit strange, but at the same time pleasant. The day passed completely peacefully. I read a book for a while, then opened my laptop and watched a few episodes of the series. In the evening, I found the food they had left in the refrigerator, heated it up, and had dinner. The only thing that surprised me a little was why they would hire a person at all. There were no animals or plants in the house that needed watering. I wasn't given any special tasks, but the house looked expensive. There were a lot of valuable things in it. So I decided that perhaps the owners just wanted someone to be in the house around midnight. I was already lying in bed in the guest room. I was looking at something on my phone, slowly scrolling through the news feed. My eyes began to close by themselves from fatigue. I put the phone on the bedside table and almost fell asleep. Suddenly, I heard a soft creaking. At first, I didn't pay attention to it. Old houses often make different sounds, but expanding. The floor moving a little. I thought it was just the house breathing, but after a few seconds, I noticed something strange. Thin strip of light from the hallway appeared from under the door to my room. I clearly remembered that when I went to bed, the light in the hallway was off. There shouldn't have been anyone in the house except me. At that moment, my heart started beating much faster. I sat up quietly on the bed and began to listen. The house was so quiet that any sound became immediately noticeable. And then I heard footsteps slow. Careful footsteps somewhere right outside the door of my room. I instantly picked up the phone and texted a classmate, "Call Vassal and asked if he sent anyone to the house." A few minutes dragged on for a very long time. I was almost out of breath, trying not to make a sound. Finally, the answer came. He says he didn't. What happened? At that very moment, the door handle to my room slowly lowered. I didn't even think. I just acted! I quickly grabbed my jacket, ran to the window, opened it, and jumped outside. Luckily, it was only the first floor! I ran around the side of the house and ran out into the street. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest coffee shop that was still open. I stayed there until morning, ordering coffee that I couldn't even drink properly because of the excitement. Vassal immediately called the police. It later turned out that someone had entered the house through an unlocked basement window. There were enough traces in the house but the person was never found. Vassal apologized to me several times and even offered to pay more for that night. I politely refused both the extra money and any future offers. Some things you experience are simply not worth any money.